Welcome back to Consuming Careers. I'm Bruce Smith, and in this episode, we're going to do something a little bit different. And to be honest, it's something a bit self-indulgent. But recently, I spent the weekend at an Asheville mountain cabin with several close friends, including 3 brothers that I interviewed for this podcast. And as you'll see, each has quite a different career path, point of view, and offers their unique perspectives on things like grit or quit, perseverance, and relationships in the workplace. We also take some time to relish our 40 years of friendship with some storytelling and some favorite practical jokes. I really hope you enjoy listening in on our discussion. So let's get started. Well, welcome back to the Consuming Careers podcast. I'm Bruce Smith, and I've got a great cast of characters today joining me on the back porch of a beautiful Asheville bed and breakfast, North Asheville. I think that's where we are. But I want to introduce our guests real quick. Actually, I'm going to let y'all introduce yourselves. I got 3 gentlemen that I've known for probably 40 years. Would that be about right? So, John, why don't you start?
John McGimsey. And we met in 1983 in Atlanta, Georgia.
Gosh, I was doing the math last night, trying to figure out what that year was.
I don't know how many numbers that is. How many 10?
You were doing meth. You were doing meth last night.
Did you carry the one?
Meth last
Did you carry
night.
the one? Jim, what about you?
Jim McGimsey, and I've known Bruce for way too long, actually.
No. Too long. Take some of those years back if you could. Charlie?
I guess I've known Bruce as long as John has, because John and I were roommates in Atlanta, and my first real memory of you was on a Chattahoochee raft trip on a Sunday afternoon with your sister and some others, and how memorable that wild, rapid, non-rapid ride was for 8 hours drinking beer.
Don't bring my sister into that. She's not going to like that at all. So how about if we do this? Let's just kind of go around the horn here, and everybody give a quick introduction of kind of your background, where you grew up, where you worked through your career, and then we'll kind of get into a deeper dive with some questions around career.
Charlie's should start. His is the easiest.
All right.
Yeah.
Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah.
This is Charlie McGimsey. I was born in 1956, and I was a little guy. I was really a small person. When I was 14 years old, I went to Philmont Scout Ranch, and they made you weigh in before you could hike, and I weighed 83 pounds. The rule there was that you could not carry more than 20% of your weight, which my friends who were all now math PhDs knew that was around 20 pounds. And they looked at me like, you got to be kidding. You're not going to get to carry 20 pounds. So I carried more than that. That size had a lot to do with my growing up. I had to work harder at things, had to work harder at being an athlete. I had to work harder at getting the attention of some ladies, had to develop other skills. I noticed later in life that people who were handsome men and, tall athletes and all, they didn't have to work as hard, and they didn't work as hard. But I had to. So I grew up with that, really never saw that as a disadvantage, just something I needed to acknowledge and overcome. Went to college, started out as a music major in college, and after a year decided being a band director was not my dream and dropped that. Walked on the wrestling team and would wrestle for 4 years at East Carolina, get an accounting degree, become a CPA, and I guess that's a good start on my background. Later, I would meet the love of my life, Willis Stevenson, and marry her. More on that later.
More on that. All right. And so today, you're still same career, same general path, right?
Yeah, I worked for Dad in his business for a couple of years, and then, which had always been my plan, entered public accounting, and I've been in public accounting since 1983. I haven't done anything else other than some things on the side, but
right.
Been a CPA and enjoyed that career.
John, quick math, 1983, where are we? Is that 40 years?
I'm sorry.
Carry the one alt times 2.
That's right.
I'm still thinking about what I did at the warehouse that my dad doesn't know about. I'm sorry.
Well, we'll get to that. Actually, we'll get to that pretty quick.
I was in Paris just now.
All right, John, we'll pull you up next. What about you? Quick background on you.
Same as Charlie, born in Lenoir, North Carolina, and I was born big. I was very large. I was the largest member of the family. And my brother Jim always said I looked more like the postal carrier than I looked like Dad. So that really bothered me. So anyway, did kind of like the routine was doing the same sports, but wrestling was what I got into that I liked. And went off to school, and I had several attempts at college, different years. So first was East Carolina because they had me. Nobody else would. And then I left there, and then I was going to be. Oh, that's right. I went to theater journalism. I wanted to be in the theater.
Okay.
And I remember being in the classroom, and the instructor on my second semester of general theater, and it said, probably 150 people in this room, and said, look around the room. I mean, really look at each other. One of you, maybe on the wild side, two of you will make it in the theater industry. And I looked around the room, and I said, well, can't be me. So I left, went talked to my advisor, and changed to psychology or something.
You said, I'll make it easy on the rest of you.
Oh yeah, let me bow out, and you guys just take off. And so I remember that, talking to Dad about that later. Your dad was a driver, and says, why would you give up that easy? Why would you, But that's what I did, and then got kicked out for bad grades and partying, and then that's when Charlie and I lived together in Atlanta, Georgia, where we met in '83.
That's right.
And I was just bouncing around topics like, what was the easiest thing I could take to get me a degree? And I was in marine biology and end up in zoology. Moved back to North Carolina. Went to Carolina for a little while, then finished at State in zoology with a minor in entomology and veterinary parasitology. I was going to be a vet, and you were helping me, pushing me that way, kinda.
Yeah.
So then, went that. We'll talk more later, I guess, but jumped ship into customer service and tech support, and finished at Apple and retired from Apple in 2020.
Yeah. So veterinary to customer service to Apple. That's quite a track. All right.
Yes, sir.
We'll get the story on that.
I didn't even talk about the paper routes we had to carry.
Always working.
All right, Jim, to you.
Well, Jim McGimsey, born in Lenore, lived in North Carolina for the most part of my entire life, somewhere, and all over the state actually. And let's see, started out work-wise. Let me back up. Let's talk about high school for just a second. We don't need to focus too much on high school. But I remember my dad said when I graduated that I deserved a diploma because he never saw anybody go to high school for 4 years and never bring a book home. So needless to say, I didn't spend a lot of time studying, but I did crack that diploma open privately when nobody could see if there was actually a diploma in the little bag that it came in, the little sleeve. But I guess what I didn't know then, which was interesting, was I probably could have gone to college somewhere, but I just figured I couldn't. And so I went into the Marines. Hoorah! And spent some time in the Marines, and then came back and jumped around in technology companies. And I went to East Carolina, then jumped around in some technology companies, and pretty much what I'm still doing today.
That's what you're doing now?
Mm-hmm.
All right, good. All right, hey, if I haven't mentioned it already, and y'all of course know this, but the listeners may not, that you are all three brothers. You've got three sisters, and there's a pretty important connection here. When I moved to Atlanta in '83, maybe it was '82, met John, and we became fast friends, waiting tables together, and their family literally adopted me into their family, and been very formative. So we get together almost every year for a kind of a getaway up in Asheville. That's where we are today, and it's just a great chance to get back together, and because we're all separated. So John, you're in Austin, Jim's in
Texas.
Raleigh, Charlie's in Atlanta, I'm in Atlanta. So this is a unique opportunity to get together. So I thought we ought to do this podcast and get everybody in one place. So I just want to run through some questions. I want to just get your read on a few things. And most of these will be either career-based or maybe just life-based, and we'll just have some fun. So what was
the best financial investment you knowingly made, not just got lucky with some sort of Apple stock that somebody threw in your lap, but that you knowingly made that you would have put twice as much money in if you would have known better? Anybody?
I would say a rental house that I bought. I didn't even have the money to really invest in the rental house, and my neighbor invited us to go in together, and it was quite a stretch. I remember in the end we probably put in $30,000 a piece, but you know the market. We kept it. We were going to keep it for 5 years and then flip it, and we kept that for 17 years. We literally had somebody in there all but like a month and a half.
That's
and then
great.
The market in Raleigh went off the chart. So, yeah, if I had about 5 of those.
We'd be at your house.
Oh, my goodness.
Somewhere. Yeah. John, Charlie, anything come to mind?
I'd say the best financial investment, this is probably not exactly what you're shooting at, but what comes to my mind, I ever made was in me. And it started with my parents investing in me in an education. That was huge.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how much that's meant to me in my life. The second was I realized that, like an Eagle Scout award, an Eagle Scout badge is known and recognized everywhere. Everybody knows that's a big deal. They don't often know what all went into it, but they know it's a big deal. And I realized that being a CPA was a similar type thing, that everybody recognized that. So I made a financial investment in the programs that I needed to review to be able to pass that CPA exam, and I actually made a financial investment in probably making a little less money early in my career to get the experience requirement down so I could be certified. So I'd say those are the two biggest financial investments I've made. We can talk about some other stock things at some point. But.
Yeah. Well, I made that investment in the CPA exam 3 times.
I made it at least that many times.
Yeah,
Until I finally passed it.
Oh, my God.
That's funny that it just hit me. All of y'all are CPAs. That's bizarre.
That's
crazy.
right.
And you're an Eagle Scout, so there.
I know. I'm a paper boy.
Yet we
I got
still
paper
got
route.
lost on the Mount Mitchell Trail yesterday.
Yes,
But that's beside
we
the point.
did. Yes.
John, how about
Mine's
you?
probably similar to Charlie's. Is different. Mine was really. I'll tell a brief story. I got a bonus when I was at ATT Wireless in the wireless division when it was just after Craig McCall sold, and you guys remember these days, and they had, you could buy stock as an employee, and I had no money, but I got a bonus, and I went to my bank, and one of the bank people, and said I wanted to start putting money away. I'd like to have these people talk about these money markets and these accounts that you can put money away and it can grow by itself and leave it alone. I think even Charlie recommended it. And I remember talking to 3 different entities, and all 3, they'd say, well, how much you want to invest? $20,000, $50,000, $100,000? I go, well, I got a bonus check for $3,800. And it was like I said, I had just been diagnosed with cholera. They just hand me a brochure and good luck. It was just crazy. And I met a guy named Walter Reap he had a seminar at one of those job fair things that they have companies come into AT&T and talk about their wares, and I met him, and I really liked him. And I told him that same story, and he said, you got $25 on you? I can work with you.
All right.
And it was the first time the investment was to hire him and to put our pitiful little savings away. And and never look back. I've thought about Walter. He later introduced me to Gloria, who we use now, and it's just been the best.
That's
great. It's the best ride of like having no money, and yet he said, you got $25?
I remember when Carolee and I, we were just got married, and we went down to Seaside. Y'all might know where Seaside is in Florida. Yeah. It's amazing beach town. Well, I say beach town. It's more like a development. We went down there. This had to be 30 years ago, and we just got out of college, and we're just married, and barely had any money, and we're down there with like 6 or 8 couples, and one of the couples, he was working at Microsoft. He was making a lot of money, or he was an attorney. I forget. He stands up and he says, "Man, we ought to buy one of these places. If everybody pitches in $25,000, we can get a lot and develop it." And we're looking at each other and we're like, $25,000? We will never have $25,000 other than grocery money. That's never going to happen. And of course, fast forward, those things just exploded in value. That's funny. Charlie, and I'm going to go off script here. You mentioned something about your parents investing in you. And when I had the concept of putting this thing together, kind of wanted to explore the idea of the value of relationships. Look, there's been a lot of studies. Harvard's done a lot of studies around the value of relationships at work that improve performance, improve productivity. But I believe there's a lot to be said for the value of relationships outside of work, whether that's friendships, marriages, and I look at the three of you as brothers, where you really go out of your way to stay connected when you don't have to, right? So not everybody stays connected to their family. What would you say, anybody can jump in, around the value of close friendships, brotherhoods, sisterhoods, marriages that can really support a productive and healthy work life?
I heard a speaker recently talking about how these people who are mega successful became mega successful. And among others, he used Bill Gates as an example. And what he's saying is that Bill Gates is a really brilliant person, but there are many other brilliant people. That Bill Gates and his success has a lot to do with being at the right place at the right time.
Right.
Some would call that luck. Some would call that good fortune. So I'm not naive into thinking that my success and my wonderful life, my blessed life, is due to me being so slick. I got lucky. I had lucky parents. I mean, I was lucky to have them. And I see other people who just developed entirely differently or didn't develop, and I say, they just didn't have the parenting we had.
Yeah.
And I think relationships, you can be fortunate as I have been and have great relationships, or you can do as you suggest and work to have great relationships, to go out of your way to meet and get to know and befriend people who are wonderful people. I read a thing this week that talked about caustic people and how do you avoid having a relationship with those people. And the author said, I don't know of a way to tell you how to avoid them, but I can tell you how to have a relationship with a virtuous person. And I think that is, as you're pointing out, a huge bit of guidance for people.
I heard a great description about friends. You've got deal friends, you've got real friends. Deal friends are maybe the folks that you make good friends with them because you're helping each other get something done. But real friends really can't help you make any money.
That's good.
They can't help you do anything at work. They're just friends, and they show up when you need them.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
I keep that in mind. And, on one hand, I've got real friends, right? John, you were going to say something?
I had a buddy named Mike, and he's passed away since, but he, we worked together for years when I was in the recruiting business, and then and we met every week and just talked. And he had like 4 kids and been married for 30-some years, and he would often say, he coached his kids in baseball and in soccer, and mostly baseball, and he refereed, umpired, all this stuff. And he said, my family's more important than anything I can make. And it frustrated his wife because he would tell anywhere he worked, any account he was doing or deal, he says, when my kids have a game, I won't be here. Or if you have this meeting on Tuesday at 3 o'clock, my son's playing it. And it was amazing that everybody let him do that because he said his value of being a dad was far, far greater than the money he made in this deal he was doing. I respected the heck out of that dude. He was great.
Well, along those lines, would you say, if you think about maybe the most successful, deal or job, or just kind of maybe where there was a turning point in your career where you said, man, I really hit all 8 cylinders on that one, would you say that you would attribute that to the relationships that you had at that moment, the technical skills you had to do the job well, or maybe just your persistence to win in that situation?
I think for me it'd be persistence, but the other two, are super important, but just staying after it gets hard. You got to have those relationships. You got to put in extra work to learn something, maybe something you only want to learn. You just got to stay after it. You can never let up. Every day you got to be learning something new, listening, paying attention, making sure that you're moving your career ahead, moving your family ahead, whatever it is.
Sure.
what came to mind when you said that, I thought about my greatest accomplishment that I wear with a great pride is the career path program at Apple, and it was called My Path. And I got told no so many times. And I shared with you guys the other night that one of the things I told you guys when I worked for this regional leader, and she was North American VP, and she'd always tell me no. And every time she'd tell me no, I said, you realize that when you tell me no, it's just a delayed yes. And it took years and years, and we finally accomplished. We had My Path, and My Path is hard to believe since the company started in '94. There's never been in AppleCare a career path program ever. Like when people got to be a manager, here's your laptop, here's your MacBook Pro, and go lead people. And there was never classes. There was no. They do a few things for HR, more legal, right, and what you can and cannot say to people, but no. You can do this, and then you can move over here. And so it took probably 4.5 years to get My Path live. They changed the name since I left, but I have a great big engraved stone on the man cave porch, and it says, John McGimsey, my dates of employment, it says My Path Success.
Nice.
And it's now still going. It's where people can come in, and you get assigned to an advisor, a mentor, and then you chart your career path. I'm a tier 1 advisor, and I can be tier 2, 3, and I can be senior specialist and move up and then you can move to other departments, which people didn't even know about. It's so it finally got launched, and that was one of my manager's thing when I was leaving. We had a big video thing, and it was my farewell party, and she said, you got to be happy that My Path is finally going after you kept told no and no and no, and so it's finally.
So is that in the persistence bucket?
Absolutely.
All right,
is.
2 votes on persistence.
I like what Jim said. Is sometimes you have to go over here and learn something new, and I had to go over and learn the rules of the company rules. With the legal stuff of what you can and cannot do in this. And it was a serious path, but never give up, baby.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
Charlie.
On the persistence front, I just think that's a given. I can't think of anybody who's attained any level of success without it. I think you just have to have it. I mean, somebody who's just so gifted that they just rise to the top without any downturns I don't know that person. In my life, the best thing I did was to start a business young. That was just the best thing. And to have a platform of technical ability. I was a CPA. I was 28 years old. And at about 8 o'clock at night, I got a call from my girlfriend who was out of town working on an audit with the team of CPAs. And she said, Bobby Jones, who was the main auditor at our CPA firm, is with us, and he wants to go out and start his own firm. But he doesn't do tax work, and you do. Would you be willing to start a business with Bobby Jones? I didn't hardly know Bobby Jones.
And how old where were you? What year was this? How old were you?
I was 28.
28.
And at that point, I had about 3 years in public accounting since I'd worked for my dad for a couple of years. And I said, yeah, I'd love to talk to him about it. A week later, we quit. We were so naive that think about it. How many people do you know as CPAs? A CPA at age 28 is kind of halfway figuring out which end is up. And we're starting a business. Well, naive as it was the best thing we did. But it was the relationships. It was my relationship with Becky Ward that would lead to Bobby Jones, that would lead to where things went. And so, having a platform of technical skills and being persistent are givens, and then the relationships, that's huge.
Well, you make a good point. Doing it early, you got time to fail, right?
Yeah.
So if the whole thing fell apart in 2 years, it's like, well,
we
can just start right on over again. Yeah.
My dad.
That's wise.
My dad asked, well, what are you going to do if you fail? And before I could answer, he said, well, you just go back to work for somebody. You're fine.
That's right. Well, if you had to, or if money wasn't an issue, what job in your career would you go back and do? Or even if it is the one you have right now, if you could go back and if money wasn't an issue, where did you find kind of the most fulfillment, enjoyment?
Probably work-wise. I'm in sales training. I probably would go back into just pure sales.
Pure sales, all right.
Yeah,
Why is that?
I've done about half and half. Well, I mean, it's that closing the deal. It's the win,
Okay.
I love what I'm doing, and I think I have a great time, and I think I add a lot of value to people, but you miss the closing the deal.
Yeah.
Celebrating the big one.
John?
I don't know about
Yeah.
what I would go back to, but I think about things I would like to have done that just didn't know.
Okay.
But I really think, it's bizarre, but marine biology and having things I've learned since that people could be specialized in, studying seals or,
Yeah.
aquatic crustaceans or just all these things. And then probably theater. Just would love to have done that. Always been, that, as my bride says, I was born to have a microphone in my hand. And it was kind of that being a ham, I guess, is the other part. But, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Charlie, how about you? Because you've been in the same kind of path for the last 40 years.
When I was a teenager, I said, I'm going to be a forest ranger or a park ranger. I heard that there were people who had jobs where all they did was backpack through a national forest for a week or two and check on people and check on the park. And I thought, what a job to backpack for a living. So maybe I'd have been a park ranger or a forest ranger or something like that.
Yeah. All right.
I met a guy this is great. We saw that massive rover yesterday in the parking lot. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys in my class last week, we were talking, he has something like that, just crazy looking machine. And he opens it back up and he says, would anyone like coffee? He had a coffee machine. He made everybody coffee. And then we were joking about, he says, well, anybody want to go to lunch down the road? There's a cafeteria. And he says, well, I'm eating at home. And this is where he and his wife built a company together, and it's grown. They use social media and everything, and all they do is companies send them stuff, tents, campers, devices, outdoor stuff, and they test it and write about it and send and promote it, and they get paid full time to just be outside and play with gear. Yeah. And I'm like, Joe, man, you're my new best friend.
That's great.
Well, amazing. I thought, one told us we could do this.
Yes.
When you could be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant.
Yeah. Career counselor didn't have that one on the list.
Not at all.
That's great. Well, we talked a little bit earlier about the concept of grit versus quit. And I heard that, a couple weeks ago, and I thought, wow, that's a really compelling question. Like, what do you use? What's your kind of thought process around? Do you just grit through the challenge of what just seems insurmountable, and with the hope that you're gonna break through, or when do you know it's time to quit?
I think of the three fellas here, someone's going to quote our Father: "You don't ever give up." And when you're getting your butt kicked on the mat, so what? It's not over. It's not over till it's over. You don't quit. And if you have a paper route and it's 17 degrees and 7 inches of snow on the ground, and you're on a bicycle with how many stops? 220 stops. We had crazy. And you can y'all drive us, or can you drive me around? And the papers like Dad's like, no, get out there and would you agree? He was all in. You're like, you just don't. Yeah, you don't
Quitting
quit.
wasn't even
it was never an option.
No.
Well, what about the idea of throwing good money after bad? Right.
I think there's a time to quit. And that time, it takes wisdom to foresee this, but you look down the line and you look at what the achievement is, and you say, it isn't worth it, or I won't be fulfilled in that. Sometimes you've got to wade into things before you know that. I remember coaching a young man who had a job offer as a CPA from a German company, and they were 3 or 4 people. And they were the U.S. part of their German operation, and I gave him all these wonderful thoughts on why he should pass on that opportunity. And I kind of patted myself on the back thinking, what a great coach I am. And he looked at me and he said, Charlie, I know you're right, but I'm just going to have to find out for myself. And Bruce, how'd that work out?
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Man, he painted me right into a corner. It worked out great, Charlie.
Good.
But I learned a lesson along the way.
Me too.
Well, something I like that in light of a parallel with Charlie is there's also a good time to say no versus quitting, because a lot and we've done recruiting together.
Yeah.
When people quit and they don't leave the company, and my coaching is always don't quit here and you just.
That's a great
You
point.
do less work.
Yeah.
Quit and go do something else that you find pleasure and joy, but
right.
don't quit and still stay at the company.
Right.
And too many times they did that.
Well, we talked about that, John, when you were leaving Apple.
Oh, yes, we did.
You wanted to give them like a 2-year notice.
It was a year notice, and we had a game plan, and Leslie and I had it all worked out. Well, as a side note, Leslie thought I should retire because we're good and life is good and the bills are paid, so to speak. And it offended me because I really like doing projects. I moved to the project world, and it kind of offended me. Like, yeah, you're done. I'm like, I'm not done. And so then I tell Bruce, well, we got a good game plan, and it was like October. And I'm going to tell my boss at the time, January, whatever it was, that we're back on the 5th, and my last day will be October, 13th. It's exactly a year, and I hardly got into this. I was gung ho. This is a great plan. And Bruce says, "Nope, don't do that. Do not do that." I'm like, "What?" He says, "How many people you've worked with that know they're quitting? What their attitude's like, knowing it's 3 months or 4 months away?
Like 2 weeks.
You're just done. You're done already, and how bad they worked, and how."
Right.
And I remember going home and telling Leslie that, and she goes, "I think he's right. I think he's right."
Nobody wants to work with you if you're checked out.
It was funny too because we still moved it to 3 months, but when we got in, we had the new year planning, and she goes, "Oh, we got this new global project, going to do this thing, and it starts in April 5th, and they got this. You'll be a Mia," and I just remember looking at her and doing like this, and she goes, "Why are you nodding no?" I said, "I'm supposed to tell you this in a couple more months," and she's like, "What?" I said, "I can't do it." She's like, "What?" So finally she says, "You're not leaving." I said, I'm leaving.
That's great.
Hey, I got one grit thing for you too.
Yes, sir.
I got a real one.
Ouch! I was a brand new wrestler on the East Carolina wrestling team, and I had been an all-state wrestler in high school in North Carolina, but North Carolina wrestling was nothing like Northeastern U.S. wrestling. And I was on this team now with all these multiple year state champions from New York and Pennsylvania and Virginia. Anyway, I, after a couple of weeks, was just a punching bag. I was just getting beat up every day. And I decided one day that I would initiate a takedown every second, that every moment I would be shooting a takedown. And surely, by being the aggressor, I would get takedowns. And that's all we worked on, were takedowns.
All right.
And these guys in the room, one guy had been in the Army for 4 years and then wrestled and was All-American for 4 years. He's a 28-year-old man, and here I'm 19. So I shot takedowns. Every moment for 90 minutes, I was the aggressor, I was the shooter. I think I probably initiated at least 30 takedowns, and I got taken down 30 times. I was beaten every single time. And I rode home on my bicycle. I rode across a big field. It was dark outside, and I remember crying. Now, I didn't just have tears. I was bawling out loud. I was so frustrated. But I decided I'm going to have grit here, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be successful in wrestling. And it took 4 years, and I never won a national championship, but I was a successful wrestler at a major college level, and that was incredibly fulfilling. And as a result, and I've talked to other people with similar experiences, you take that and you say, I think I can do something else now. I can become successful in another thing.
That's right.
Anyway, grit's huge.
Jim, you got a real one?
Look, we're talking about grit or quit, and I was in public accounting at the time, and I'd been in public accounting for about 10 years, and the last 6 years was in consulting, which was really the deal, because in consulting, you don't have to sit at a desk all day long.
Yeah.
And so it came up to promotion time, and I moved from one town to another town where we had offices, and I asked about the promotions, and they were like, well, the other office has to put you up for the next promotion. I was a manager. That next promotion was senior manager, and the other office has to, you came from there. They got to put you up.
All right.
Same thing in but this where I went, they said, no, that's, and the other office said, no, it's up to the new office. Well, I hadn't been in the new office very long. I don't know why they would put me up, but I remember thinking that the whole promotion thing came and went, and nobody put me up. And it wasn't like putting you up meant you got promoted. It just meant you got put into the people that were up there. And I thought, I'm not waiting another year. I mean, that was crazy, that fact that nobody even bothered to put me up, and I felt like I was doing a lot. So I left that and got into something called network integration, and that was a great move for me. And I never look back regretting that I made that move then.
Yeah. So you think that was a grit or quit?
No, that was a quit. It was an absolute quit. I mean, I was like, the grit was gone at that point.
As a bizarre side note, when I was a few years into my role as an area manager and having managers who manage people, I remember watching people, because everybody had a career path, right? After that, you become this lead, and then you become a business and a director and all that. And everybody was just always trying to move up, and everybody around us talked about, when can I ever get promoted? And I remember telling my current manager, I don't want to ever get promoted. And he was like, so I said, I love what I'm doing, and this level is so good. But and I said, I look at what you do, and you're miserable. You get paid a heck of a lot more money, but man, I don't want to do what you do. And here's what's crazy.
Great.
He said, you're going to be criticized, you're going to be judged, because you're no longer driven. It's going to be interpreted as you're no longer driven. So he was like, keep that on the DL that you don't want to move up, and I'll be when people when they're looking for recommendations, I won't recommend you. And I said. And when I started telling people that, it was amazing how I had this reputation of like, he's not driven anymore.
He's loafing. He's loafing.
He's quit.
And it was amazing. But that was my grit. Was like, I'm going to do this job the best of my ability, and I'm going home.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like you. It was crazy.
Well, y'all used to work at the same company back a few years ago at City Flower and Feed for your dad. Now, I had a question about, was there ever anything that you did at City Flower and Feed that your dad never knew about, that he would be?
Probably most of the things we did there he never knew about. There wasn't much he knew we did.
Gracious.
I'll tell you one thing that I don't think these guys know. I don't think I ever talked about it, but, it's a wholesale grocery, and everything's in big boxes and all this stuff. And I took it upon myself that whenever I wanted something to eat, which was generally, candy or something, I just reached in that great big box of soup.
You're lying. You stole candy.
Listen. Just here's what I do. You looking down the aisle and make sure nobody's coming. And those big super bubbles, I would literally push it open, put a hand, pull one out, put it in my mouth, and stick the paper in and just go
I
load
cannot
trucks.
believe you stole.
I did that.
You are a dog.
1,000 times.
Yeah.
Every summer was like, and it was always like, and here's my thing. I have really bad breath. To my mind, I get really bad breath. I got to get rid of this bad breath. And I would go get a bubble gum and put it in my mouth and just
Never
be working.
knew that.
Yeah,
That's funny. All right, we'll move over to Mr. Righteous.
All right. So I got one. These guys know I did this, but Dad never knew. And most importantly, my grandfather, who started that business, never knew. He sent me to the gas station to pick up a truck battery because one of the truck's batteries was dead. And he said, you can take my car. And he had a wonderful 98 with cloth seats, beautiful, looked like silk cloth seats. And I went to the gas station, and I got the battery. And, of course, where do you put a battery but right beside you?
That's right,
in the seat. Well, on the way back, the battery flops over, and the battery acid spills out all over the seat. Well, it would be only a few weeks before Pa's beautiful seats were decayed and deteriorated, and I never told anybody except these two rascals what I had done.
Jim, I'm sure you didn't do anything.
I guarantee you I didn't do anything like that, but I did steal some cheese. We had these big clunks of cheese.
You're a cheese thief?
We had these big clunks of cheese in the
Hoop
cooler.
cheese.
Hoop cheese. I was trying to think of the name. Hoop
and
cheese.
they started dividing it up, you had to chip in, and they started having these. And I remember just going there one time to get me in a big old fat slice of that. Went on down the road.
Bruce, I think we need to stop now that I know both my brothers are thieves.
Listen, we don't bring up Barney's, man. Don't be going there. Don't be going
now
there.
that's going way back. That's below the belt.
There we go.
I was only about 6 years old when I stole from Barney.
Well, there you go.
All right, we're starting.
6 years old.
Or maybe 7.
I'm in Barney's as a toddler.
He was in the back.
By myself.
At 6 years old, he was in the back reading those magazines.
Mom pushed me in the stroller and I grabbed some candy as she went by.
All right, you're... Okay.
All right, we're going to begin to land this plane. So I got kind of one key question for everybody. You can think about this. Would you say that you're consuming your career or your career has consumed you? You can interpret that any way you like.
Well, I would say while I'm in it, I'm consumed. And since I've left, it's no longer consuming me.
Well, when you were working, I mean, pick.
Yeah.
Pick that one
Pick
day.
one. Pick one. That one day you worked hard. Remember that?
Well, it's interesting. Great. So I remember, especially in the project world, having big projects and that oftentimes people around me would say, all eyes are on this project. You better make sure this is, and it was that huge pressure. And how I would think I'm working, my office is an hour away, and not that far mileage is the traffic, but I remember leaving early and staying late, and we've talked about this, Jim and I, like being there early and being late and how it looked. And my bride would always say, no one's seeing that. Like, you're there before people are there and you leave later, so that you're not getting any extra points, and they sure aren't paying you more. But that was my thing. But I was all in. Like, it was crazy, busy, stressful in those, there might be a 3 to 6 month project.
Yeah.
And how, I lived that. Like, and she's like, you need, you can come home sometimes, and eat dinner with the family and that kind of thing. And I thought, this is normal. And then later on, I look back and go like, the managers and the people in this project, they would never know all that crazy hours I did just to, get it done. But I was, sold out.
Well, that was kind of more the persistence or grit part, right? Sometimes you got to do that.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that?
I definitely think that, I've consumed it. I don't feel like I've, been consumed. I've kind of directed everything I wanted to do, and I do some of the stuff John said. There's times when you have to stop and do something, but for the most part, I'm just after it. Every day, what I can do better, quicker, faster, and
that's good.
I definitely don't think that it's consumed me, but it won't be long.
I got a side note. I don't know if you even remember this, but we had a distant cousin relative named Edith Beers, and she calls me up, and we got to know each other because she was tracing the McGimsey name.
Yeah.
She had all these people and all these documents, and she calls me up one day, and I was working as a waiter. I was a wait captain, and then we were at the Georgian, and she said, "Hey, I got a question for you, John. Would you like to go with me to the Masters? Our cousin Garth is playing in the Masters, and I got tickets, and her husband, he's a member." And I remember saying, "Gosh, Edith, I would love to go, but I can't. I got to work today or tomorrow, and and the whole thing."
Yeah.
And I knew the Masters, but okay. And I remember being in lineup, and all they tell about the evening and what banquets and all the things, and I remember telling one of the guys, said, "Well, I was supposed to go to the Masters tomorrow," and I said I decided not to go. He said, "Say what? You were invited to go to the Masters tomorrow?" And he goes, "What are you doing here? You call in sick. You don't turn down the Masters." And I've never forgotten that. And then, of course, it went down the line, and Carson finds out. He goes, "I'm sorry, John, you were invited to the Masters, and you're here." The boss man saying, "What is wrong with you?" And I messed up, but
that's funny.
Yeah, that was my consumed moment that I thought I should have been at work, and how dishonest to call in sick.
That's right.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Charlie?
I think I pretty much always had a plan along those lines and recognized early on that people would get consumed and just forget their lives. When I started practice with Bobby Jones, we worked a lot of hours, by my standards anyway, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And that was when I met and would date Willa, whom I would later marry. and she knew how many hours I worked, and I said, there'll come a time when I'll cut back. It won't consume me. I'll be on top of it. And she doubted that, but I did. And over the years, I've been in that business for 40 years. I've steadily been less consumed with it. And I think there are times when you have to work and do what it takes. And if you need to work 100 hours to get it done, to serve your clients or customers, your business, you do it. But there are times when you don't. And recognizing the difference between those two is important.
That's great.
When you asked the question about what regrets or what if we had all the money, what would we go back and do? I'm really disappointed and shocked that Charlie didn't mention Buckhead Wholesale Office Furniture. So go back and do that. So hold on. We started this company together, and Charlie's going to do the books and I'll do the sales, and we just got this cool deal where we could buy from a wholesale manufacturer and sell to people and mark it up.
Office furniture.
And it was office furniture. It was, and it was such a fun little short stint. But the funny part was, if the phone rang and we had another line, I think we had just our landline had a separate landline. I answered it, and I'd say Buckhead Office Furniture, and Charlie go, it's Buckhead Wholesale. Drop the wholesale. That sends a message. This is cheaper. It was just it made him crazy it was just too long. I go, Buckhead Office Furniture, and he goes, it's wholesale. And we did that for a short time. We made some crazy money, real short for me. In doing nothing but just sending somebody to a warehouse, and this girl Carol would act like she worked for us. We'd show them around. They'd buy a desk and some big chairs, and it was.
Oh, that's fun.
And we offended guys in our leads because we were doing at wholesale plus 15%, and office furniture is 300% markup. What is wrong with you two? I said, we're not sending anybody you sound like a cheapskate. We said, no, man, we're giving people a deal.
We bought boxes full of letterhead, and to this day, my wife, who's a thrifty lady, is still using the Buckhead Wholesale Office Furniture letterhead as making
scratch
notes
paper.
and scratch
Whoa,
paper.
that's half that should be in mine.
Well, it's too bad. Squatters' rights.
So we're both doing this on the side, and I think then I was at the Ritz and at the club business, and we just couldn't keep up with it, and I guess we had stacks and stacks of letterhead.
Right. All right. It's time to get into the lightning round, and this is going to be quick questions, quick answers, and we'll just go with that. All right. If you had only one bottle of libation to drink for the rest of your life, what would it be, Charlie?
Water.
Good answer. Jim?
Woodford Reserve.
Blade and Bow.
All right.
Man.
You only get one bottle, though. That's it.
That's a tiny bottle.
You got to sip it.
I forgot you said libation. I want to change my answer.
Go ahead and change it.
Old Forester Prohibition Special.
Okay. All right. If you
Charlie said water.
Well,
that does come in
Please
handy.
pay attention to the question. And Bruce is good answer.
So much for the lightning round. It collapsed.
I should have known. That question was actually on the CPA exam back in 1982.
All right. If you're on an island and you could only listen to one album, what would it be? Rest of your life. One album. Favorite album, Charlie?
Allman Brothers live at Fillmore East.
Wow. Good one.
Journey, pull it out. Pull any one of them out. They're all good.
Any album. That's good.
Earth, Wind, and Fire,
Earth, Wind, and Fire. Okay.
Go with that too.
All right. If your iPhone only had one app, other than phone and text, what would be the only one you'd need or want?
Navigation.
Yeah, Waze. I'd say Waze.
Waze.
Yeah.
Get those points.
And
All
make
right.
money.
All right.
Points.
Best live concert. Jim, best live concert.
Probably Earth, Wind, and Fire.
All right. Yeah, just a couple months
Lionel
ago.
Richie.
That was good. John?
Doobie Brothers and Foreigner.
Oh, man.
Nice. Those are good ones.
No
Sarah?
question. 1986 Journey.
Wow. Nailed it.
I never got to see
All
that,
right.
man.
Last question. This is for double points here. Best practical joke that you pulled on somebody else.
Wow. We know that one.
Let me think.
Not the one pulled on you, John. Just
I know what Charlie's can answer.
This is a chance
How
to
about
tell them about Mary and the baby doll in the warehouse.
This is a group effort of all of us, and I won't give all the details, but basically a guy shows up with a was given a group of toys for his kids.
Now, where are you?
We're in the warehouse. We were
Okay.
working for City Flower and Feed.
Yeah.
And the buildings were great big buildings. But in the very, very back was this massive metal building with rafters. It's old, huge building. And we thought how fun it would be to rig up. One of the toys was an old baby doll. And went up in the very back of this building, I got to keep from laughing, and tied this baby doll on a rope, on actually fishing line, monofilament, and tied it up and rigged it up into the rafter. And when you came into the door of the building, there's a little hook right there, and had the monofilament tied to it, and you could unhook it, and this baby doll would swing down and hit whoever was walking up there. So we sent many people. We even did it to Charlie.
Well, did you tell it was dark? The warehouse was
So I was
totally
going to
dark.
say, we did it to Charlie first. He was the trial run. and when you went into the building, as soon as you got the person, hey, can you help us get those boxes, pick those boxes up? And like way, like 50 feet in. And then as soon as the person bends down to grab that box, you hit the light, turn the lights off, and it's completely pitch black. And here comes this creature swinging down at you.
Just barely see
Charlie
it.
dove out of the way like he was in a military movie. He was diving into the kudzu. He just literally dove out like Superman, got out of the way. But the best was our sister Mary. Well, we got Mary up there.
Okay.
Our sister, and she, first thing, we were calling her on the intercom, Mary, come up and help. And Mary never goes up that far back because she's always working in the front doing the small items, packing small item boxes. So she's really mad walking up there, kind of like, why do they want me to come up here? And Ronald Pennell's the one who got her up there. He says, Mary, come up here and help. We need your help. She's like, why would they want me to help them? And she storms off, and she finally gets there. What? He says, come here. I need you to help me with this. And she storms up to that box. Light goes off. Now we're all around. We're all hidden.
Yeah.
And so cases of paper towels. So you could be 15 feet in the air on these boxes, and the light goes off, and that thing swings down. And Mary thinks it's a bat. And Mary screams bloody murder. Not only does it hit her in the leg, and she's screaming like somebody's stabbing her, but it comes back and hits her in the back. And she loses it. The lights come on, and everybody just comes out of nowhere, figures out. And Mary said later, it was like damn munchkins. There was all these munchkins coming out of the woodwork. She's laughing and pointing at me. She was irate, screaming and cussing, going back down to the front.
That was a great gag.
And we're pointing and laughing, and she's like, I thought it was a bat. I thought a bat was attacking me. It was the highlight of our pranks, but yeah, we've done a bunch. Charlie pulls a lot on, like probably one you would remember the best was having Mom test the water in our home.
Oh, that was so fun. Do I get to tell that one?
Yes, you do.
I love to do prank phone calls. It's so much fun. I called Mom and Dad when they were at the beach with some folks and disguised my voice. I knew there had been a big storm or maybe even a hurricane come through and had caused a lot of damage at the beach where they had been staying. And I called and disguised my voice as if I were with the government, and I was checking on their water supply. And my mother was on the phone, and I was asking her some official-sounding questions, and finally I got to, well, Betty, have you drunk any of the water? Oh, yes, I have. How does it taste? And she said, well, it's fine. I said, if you would go over there and pour yourself a glass and take a taste. And she said, all right.
And Dad's sitting at the dining table, nodding like,
she's so compliant.
why is she drinking water?
I hear her over there getting the water from the sink and coming back to the phone. I said, take a taste. And she took a drink, and I said, how does it taste? And she said, well, it tastes fine. I said, does it taste like a smooth glass of wine your son, Charlie McGimsey, might serve you? And she knew then that she'd been had. That was fun.
But you went on with her for hours.
I hear Dad in the background going, Betty, I can't believe he got you again.
Jim, what do you got?
Oh, I'll try to narrow it down to three. Was this lady named Ann. She hated the smell of apple gum. Give me the green apple gum. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And so Joe and I, this other guy that worked there, he said, we're going to get Ann with this. She can't stand that out. I didn't know she didn't like it. She just goes crazy when she smells any apple gum. So we bought a wad of gum, and he and I both stood there and chewed gum where our mouth was so full we could hardly chew this gum. And we pulled her desk out in her office, and we we put it up underneath the edge of the top of the desk, just crushed it up in there, right? Pushed it back. So she goes to lunch. She comes back and she says, because Joe's office was connected to her. She says, "Do you smell apple gum? That apple gum? I smell that apple gum." And Joe said, "I don't smell anything." She said, "Come in here. So she tears her office down, pulls the drawers out, the trash can, everything. This lasted for 3 or 4 days that her office smelled like apple gum. And we never told her. So unless she listens to this, she'll never know.
She's going to find out. We'll have to make sure we forward this episode to her.
She would kill me.
She'll come burn down your house.
Yeah, it was the best. It was great.
Well, I just want to thank you all for taking the time to jump on this interview. John, Jim, Charlie, this has been just a treat to kind of dig into some career fun and some meaningful experiences that you've been able to share. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bruce, for having us.
It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you for joining us on Consuming Careers. If you've enjoyed the show, please click the follow button in your podcast app so you won't miss any of our future episodes. And if you have a minute, write us a review. We truly appreciate hearing from our listeners. And as always, I'm Bruce Smith, and you've been listening to Consuming Careers.